Let's have a look at what it means to use photographs for visual storytelling purposes. So when we talk about story in terms of visuals, we're still talking about the basic idea of storytelling and answering questions for the viewer. What happened? Who did it happen to? Where was the conflict? How was it resolved? What changed as a result? And of course, the important question like, what can a person learn from this story? What's the benefit? But when we work with pictures, we're working with a visual vocabulary. So it's not noun-verb object. We're dealing with angle and perspective, color and tone, point of view, image selection, pacing, and of course, finally, fitting the images in a meaningful way to the medium in which they will be viewed. So I like to think of photographs as going through a hierarchy of interest. We start at the base level with informational, and we go through to intimate. Here's some photographs of a person I photograph regularly, and I'll give you a sense of how that escalates. So we started with informational. This is like the base level of visual imagery. This is facts without flavor. This is just straightforward. This is a picture of a thing. It doesn't do anything but directly inform about what a thing looks like. From there, we can go to graphic. These tend to be bold, appealing photographs. They're sometimes a little gimmicky. They can be a little eye-catching, but you don't want to use them too often because after a while they begin to be about themselves rather than about the story. Then we go to emotional. Emotional pictures are really the core of storytelling. They connect with the viewer. They add dimension to the story. This could be a story about a girl flying her first kite. They give you a sense of what's happening and, more importantly, how it's happening and what kind of emotions might be in play. Finally, we get to intimate. These are like fly-on-the-wall pictures. These are the pictures where you wonder, how did they get that? These are the pictures where the subject or the action seems to be proceeding without regard to visual recording at the time. And those are the pictures that give you a very strong sense of being involved in the story. So, breaking it down into actual pictures that you make, we're talking about some basic pictures that you want to have as part of a collection of photographs. The establishing photo, the medium photo, and the detailed photo. Not surprisingly, these pictures also crop up. These angles, these particular shots crop up in video as well. So at this one event, we start near the end with an establishing shot that gives us a sense of the entire scale of the street, the activity, what's happening, people engaging, and so on. We back off from there to early in the day when the matriarch is guiding the setup of the process. Many medium shots are usually necessary in any collection of pictures to guide the viewer through step by step what's happening. Then there are the detail shots. This is where the photography seeks to guide the viewer's attention to things that the storytelling demands as part of the interest and key points of the storytelling exercise. I like to think of photographs as an action within a space. So you create images that offer context as well as focus. You can see something happening, but you can also see where it's happening and why it's happening there. I love environmental portraits. These can be a linchpin in locating action, personality, and activity together. So we can talk about this guy who specializes in doing headpieces for tribe. And we could talk about the fact that his whole house is overrun with these headpieces. Or we could show him on a Sunday with his mom working while she prepares Sunday lunch. We can say kids have fun playing Kiddies Carnival, or we can show a kid in Kiddies Carnival with all the reasons why this is an awesome experience for a child. Every picture, though, doesn't have to be about something very clear and identifiable. In any collection of images, there are soft passages that lead to crescendos. So not everything is bang, 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 great picture, great picture, great picture. Some pictures' purposes are to lead you through an understanding of the context of the story and the mood and feel of it as well. So here are two. I had lots of pictures from this essay of Bugsy drilling his band and talking to guys and egging them on and quarreling with them and so on. But there's a point where he stops and he just listens to the band. And we don't need to see his face. It's about Bugsy, the band, and that act of listening. Here's Dean Akin, the leader, he's notoriously reticent leader of Tribe. And this is at the launch of the first instance of the Lost Tribe. And I like the picture because it speaks a lot to the man behind the curtain persona that he has. One of the things I learned first in theater was this, and writing for the theater, was show me, don't tell me. Images have the potential to offer scale, volume, color, texture, and other contextual information at a glance. So you could use words. You could say they cooked a lot for Diwali. You could say he builds the Taja from a fax drawing. You could say he's an organized cook. You could say the band is very detail oriented. Or you could use photographs to carry that narrative forward. Like here, here, and so on. Now, a lot of my stories are about people, and I believe very strongly in the power of the portrait. I think every story should have at least one clean, clear photograph of the main protagonist. But then you have the opportunity to explore the potential of an image with context to frame, expand, and explain the personality under consideration. Answering questions like, who is this person? What are they like? Would I like to meet them? What do they do? That's a lot for a picture to carry, but here are some examples of how single pictures work to achieve that goal. This is Roger Alexis, photographed for Outlish. He's a famous puppeteer and filmmaker. The percussionist Modupe Onilu. Disabilities activist Shamla Maraj. Another disabilities activist, Brian Pouchet. And child doctor, Dr. David Bratt. So to arrive at these pictures, it's not a question of just one picture. So I was commissioned to do some photographs. Among them was a photograph of Joan Dial. And it was a photograph of an image of a mature woman in control of a very particular business. But the idea was to show the scope of the business, the texture, the feel of it, the mood, as well as to set the environment for readers who would never meet her and who would only know about her from the story. So here are 4 photographs that I submitted for that lead you through the business and the woman in the space of the business. And that's the final image as part of the collection that was published. Now, a lot of storytelling with still images began with Life magazine, which was really TV before there was TV properly. And the Life blueprint for pictures evolved over time to include 8 kinds of pictures they expected photographers to come back with from their sometimes quite lengthy shoots. So there was an overall shot, a medium view, a close-up, a portrait, and so on. The thing is, you don't need to have all these pictures, but it's a good template for thinking about how you interpret a collection of pictures. So I'm going to show you this essay, which I did in 2006. It's a simple premise. People who travel great distances to come to Port-au-Spain to work and then have to come back home. So they leave at very early in the morning, come back home late at night. I found the subject, and I'm going to show you some pictures that I pick out of this and the reasons why. So here we're applying the visual language. Not every image is a verb conveying action. Some images are there to just take you from one place or emotion or state to another. The story is an arc. It begins, it follows a rhythm, and it comes to an end. Some endings are a coda, which is to say they're an additional closing note that you add for emphasis to really sort of put a proper full stop to things. And these are the pictures that I'm going to pull out of this collection as pictures that are kind of key points in the imagery for me. So we start here. We're not even seeing the subject's face at this point, but there's a big image in the final collection. I met her really early in the morning. We left at dawn. So we're walking into the rising sun. It's lonely. It's actually quite dark, and there's a strong sense of purpose in her stride. We jump from there to a picture that I took when she was returning to the bus terminus. And she was holding up well, but I thought it interesting that the taxi driver just kept yawning. And I thought, it's a kind of compelling thing that suggests, this whole process is really hard on everybody. By the time we were on the way back to Valencia, it begins to wear her down a bit. And we're seeing it on her face now. So this is the guy on the other side really wasn't having the pictures. So officially, this is where the story ends. It ends where it begins, with her on the street. At this time, it's now completely dark. She's walking under a lone street light and so on. But while it ends here, I fit this in, which is a kind of little coda. I actually have several pictures of her at home before she left home, but those didn't seem to fit as well as the opening image. And this one really sort of says, home, drop the bags, just sit down, relax. It's a thing that a lot of people empathize with. So here's a story that I planned. I had photographed Tracy Sanka-Sharlow when she was producing her individual traditional costume. So I arrived just when she was putting the costume together, and I ended the story after her first public performance of the costume. With some of these stories, I have to publish before I'm actually finished, but this was one of the rare ones where I was actually able to finish the story to my satisfaction before it was necessary to publish. So I'll just lead you through some of these pictures, actually from the very first set of photographs. I drop in and visit Tracy sometimes twice a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, over the course of about 3 months. So a lot of things happened in that time at the space that she was working at, Grandison Labs. Tracy would sometimes dress up in blue on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening and just go and perform. So I shot a whole sequence of images around this, of which these are just 2, but it didn't fit, and it never ended up in the final story. More images of the process. This was a sidebar. I think one image from this made it into the story. She works with a small children's band and helps them to produce costumes and designs the stuff. So that's her with the mask maker and so on. Her son's helping her organize the masks and so on. It was a whole big sidebar. There just wasn't room to explore properly. More process. The picture at top actually is not the costume that she's going to wear. It's another costume she wore with her mother's carnival band. Here are a series, some detailed shots, some medium shots of her working. But this one has an emphasis on collaboration. She's with her mother at top left and with Junior Bisnath at bottom right. He's carving and helping her to produce the cowfoot that she wears as part of the costume. This is the actual night of the performance. This is before they left Grandison Labs. She's getting ready here, and then at Adam Smith Square, getting ready with her sons to perform the costume. And the top picture really is where I think this story ended. It's a very emotional moment for the family. Her eldest son is helping her because she can't walk properly with the cowfoot strapped on. So her son is walking up the street, but that's the space that her husband used to occupy, helping her get ready to get to the stage as well. But since, of course, this is a carnival thing, there's a coda piece, which is her performing the costume at the end of the story. And this is how it came together as a collection of images. Now here's a collection that was what we call ret-conned, which is the pictures came first and then a process of organizing them and then thinking through how they would. So these are pictures that I take on trips to Macarip and through Chaguaramas and so on. And after a while I began to see patterns emerging, related objects, statements of color, mood, and a sense of place that kind of fit together. And then I began to shoot with those things in mind. And this is how some of that stuff works. This one's interesting because this doesn't actually exist anymore. There's now a large lifeguards shed where that couple is standing now. The only other thing apart from the place that unifies these things really is that they're all shot with my smartphone. So they have that other technical aspect of them that pulls them into the same space. Okay, so we're in a situation now where more is possible. And of course, on the part of the viewer, more is expected. Local Lives as a project, there have been 24 of them that I've done since 2005. It would have simply been impossible in the era of film. I couldn't afford to do that because every frame was a metered cost. On the flip side of it, there's now an avalanche of imagery available. And if you want pictures to stand out, they've got to be governed and curated with a perspective, a clarity, a sense of story or thematic relationships in order to stand out. Otherwise, it's just going to get buried in that avalanche because there's like hundreds of thousands of pictures appearing every day. Into this, and there's a lot of aspects of this that I'd love to get into, but we really don't have time for now. The picture editor is a critical one. This is not a role that's well known in Trinidad and Tobago. I actually was the first picture editor at The Guardian, and it put me in an interesting place because I saw a lot of pictures that weren't my own and had to make decisions about them. And as a consequence, it made me more ruthless and cruel about my own decisions about my own pictures. I learned how to kill my darlings. I learned how to just discard pictures that were lovely, that didn't fit a story, because I had to do it to other people's pictures as well. It's a job. It's a very specific kind of job. You can Google people like John Loengard and so on, who are really quite remarkable picture editors and who shaped entire issues and magazines and books. The thing is, almost anybody can pick one good picture. But picture editors are the people who put images to work on stories. I can't tell you how many photographers I've worked with in the newspapers who were great photographers but couldn't see their own work. There are a couple of people I'm thinking of now who would come back and I'd say, pick some pictures for me. And then when I went back and looked at the take, I realized that they had skipped every important, great picture that they had shot because they simply couldn't see their own work in the context of the story. So Local Lives exists online. There's a lot of supplementary material. There's expanded galleries, scene notes. There are PDFs of the published stories and so on. And here are some contact points at which you can reach me.